Welcome to the Pet Loss Companion. I'm Ken Dolan-Del Vecchio, and I'm here with my friend and co-author Nancy Saxton-Lopez for the 100th time. So this is our 100th.
Congratulations to us. That's
It's
good.
it's our 100th episode of the Pet Loss Companion, and this is a program that we do live on Facebook and YouTube every Thursday from 6 p.m. Eastern to about 6:30 p.m. And it is our way to expand the reach of the work that we compiled into the Pet Loss Companion book. It's called the Pet Loss Companion: Healing Advice from Family Therapists Who Lead Pet Loss Groups. And this was a book that we put together after working as facilitators for our pet loss groups for a very long time. So Nancy, 30 plus years, I'm going on 12 or 13 years. And so this medium that we're engaged in right now allows us to dialogue with a broad audience, to bring some recommendations to you, and also to receive stories from you. And we very much like to receive from you the stories of your own experiences, and also recommendations for guests, recommendations for topics. And we are going to share a story that we received about a month ago now, and we'll be discussing that. The way to reach us, you can reach me at kenddv@gmail.com. You can reach Nancy at nsaxton-lopez at csmpc.com. That's nsaxtonlopez at csmpc.com. And when you write to us and you share a personal story, we will write back to you. But if you'd also let us know if we can share your story on this program, that will be very helpful. And it's what we do a lot of on the program. And many, many times we hear from people that being able to hear what other people have gone through has been really, really supportive and helpful for them. You can support our work in a number of ways: Venmo, PayPal, a monthly subscription. All of the above are in program description. So don't hesitate to take a look at that. You'll learn all what I'm going to cover in this little brief intro. This program is a friend of Dakin Humane Society in Springfield, Massachusetts. For more on Dakin, you can go to DAKINHUMANE.org. Dakin sponsors a cost-free Zoom pet loss support group that I facilitate. It is almost always on the second Tuesday of the month and runs 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You will find the RSVP link in the program description, and the next program will be on the 14th. So it's coming up in a couple of weeks. And it, again, is it's cost free. You do have to RSVP because that's the way you get the link to join. And you can join from anywhere in the world. We have people from across the United States and from across various parts of the world as well. So please consider joining me for that meeting if you think it may be helpful. And also, please consider subscribing on YouTube. The YouTube link is attached to the description as well if you're not watching this on YouTube. And I ask you to do that because when people subscribe, it helps other people learn about the program. In fact, we've gotten notes from people recently saying your program popped up when I went to YouTube and it was really helpful for me. So that's what happens when you subscribe. It allows other people to learn more readily about our program because it affects the algorithm in a way that this program appears higher on the list of resources. So I'll stop there. And Nancy, you get us started.
Yes, we have a long story, but it is a very comprehensive, beautiful story of Sarah and her dog Fozzy. And there's so much in it that I think as we talk through it, I'm going to share some of the reading with Ken, and then we can talk about a lot of issues that came up in what was going on with Fozzy and the euthanasia issues at the end.
And here's Fozzy. Fozzy was incredibly cute.
He's so
This is
cute.
Fozzy during a celebration. We have lots of pictures of Fozzy, which I'll be showing.
Yes, he's such a sweet little pea. Okay. Hi, Ken and Nancy. I first wanted to say thank you both so much for your amazing podcasts. I've been listening for weeks as I've experienced anticipatory grief, and it's been such a lifeline to me and has made me feel so much less lonely. I can't express my appreciation enough. I'm actually a registered clinical counselor, one of us. I think the term is called therapist in the US. I'm from Canada myself, but I mostly work with couples and not grief. I'm writing to you both because I recently, on Friday, December 16th, so this was back then, just a couple days ago, lost my Fozzy and my heart is breaking. I've reached out to a pet counselor that I will be seeing tomorrow for the first time. I'm hoping it will go well because I'm really struggling. Eventually, I would love to write in about my Fozzy's legacy so you can share it on the podcast. But right now, things are too fresh and I'm stuck on his death. It's the biggest thing I'm struggling with, and I wonder if people have reservations with euthanasia too. From what I've seen, it seems like not many people talk about this part of their experience, so I don't know if I'm alone in it or if it's more rare. Either way, I know there must be at least one other person out there who needs to know they're not alone in not being able to stop thinking about the haunting image of their dead dog. You can share my experience on the podcast if it will help other people or a shortened version. I apologize in advance for this being long and thank you both for so much for taking the time to read my message. Being able to send this to you is such a helpful outlet during this time of grief. I rescued my Fozzy 6.5 years ago on May 1st, 2016. He was found on the streets of Tijuana and was homeless and scared physically and emotionally. The adoption agency told us he was 2 years old, but the vets told us he was definitely older. We have no idea how old he was, which is hard because I think I would have had more peace if I knew he was 17 years old when he passed just a few days ago. He had an ultrasound of his kidneys 2 years ago, where the vet said his kidneys looked like that of a 14-year-old. So perhaps he was 16, but I can't be sure. When I met Fozzy, our souls were instantly knit together. Our bond was so deep, which makes his loss feel unbearable. I had experienced past traumas in addition to being bedridden for a year with chronic illness before I met Fozzy. I slowly learned how to walk and function again, but I experienced an emptiness that Fozzy filled. He is my heart dog and was my first secure attachment figure, which makes the bond that much more intense. I lost a family dog in the past, suddenly at the young age of 4, and she taught me how to love Fozzy in a way where I would be left without regrets. I'm happy to say that I truly put Fozzy first and gave him an amazing quality of life. Fozzy is truly my baby boy in every sense of the world. He got me outside of myself and my own health issues. Fozzy and I were both healing from chronic illness and trauma together. It was him and I against the world. His love for me was unconditional, and I genuinely loved him unconditionally too. There's nothing we could have ever done that would make even make me slightly irritated. He was perfect. We had so much fun together over the years and did everything together. Fozzy hadn't been diagnosed with any chronic illnesses before I adopted him. However, due to my own chronic illness, I was very attuned to symptoms and noticed on the first night that his heart rate felt funny to me. He was quickly diagnosed with degenerative valve disease and hypothyroidism. I became anxious about the prognosis of his heart condition and always assumed that that would take him. I gave him the best veterinary care. He saw a holistic vet who gave him an integration of modern and naturopathic, I think that's how I say it, medicine. So he was on heart medications, but he was also on supplements and acupuncture. I always feared the day Fozzy would die because he was my everything. I even saw a counselor due to my fear of losing Fozzy. I used to pray to God that I would have someone be dating or married to someone when I lost Fozzy, so that I would have someone to support me through the grief. When I met my now husband in January of 2021, part of me worried that God was providing me with that person and that Fozzy was going to pass. I now see that God was doing just that. Fozzy consistently had elevated liver enzymes throughout his life. Through my extensive research, I learned that the most common cause of this in dogs is Cushing's disease. I asked our vet to test Fozzy for Cushing's disease, but it came back negative. Later on, Fozzy developed pancreatitis. Despite being on an amazing diet and not getting unhealthy table scraps or anything high fat, I took him to the vet right away and he got treated. I put him on a pancreatitis friendly diet that was made by a local dog bakery and a veterinarian. That helped with Fozzy's symptoms, but he had chronic pancreatitis. Our vet suggested that we test for Cushing's disease again, and we did, but this time it came back positive. She explained that Fozzy will be more prone to pancreatitis and other infections due to his Cushing's disease. He also developed back leg weakness that progressively got worse over time. He was on supplements for Cushing's disease, liver detox supplements, laser pain therapy, acupuncture, and everything you could think of, as well as prescribed medications for his conditions. As someone with chronic illnesses, I know the importance of an integrated approach to health and wanted the best for my boy. He also had non-slip boots that he wore to help with his back leg weakness. Then in the summer of 2021, Fozzy had a neurological crisis. He stopped eating, paced restlessly, and started pressing his head into the wall. I knew the last sign was a huge red flag, so we took him to the emergency vet. Fozzy had developed hepatic encephalitis due to the pancreatitis. Hepatic encephalitis is a nervous system condition that's caused by severe liver disease. When the liver can't properly detoxify the toxins in the blood, these toxins can cause brain damage. Fozzy was put on medications to help the body dispose of the toxins more quickly, and the vet was hopeful that this would stop or slow down the progression of the encephalitis. These medications helped Fozzy mostly recover from this crisis, but he lost his eyesight. Fozzy was referred to a dog optometrist who said that his eyes themselves were fine, but that something in the central nervous system was making it so Fozzy couldn't see. The hepatic encephalitis damaged the connection between his brain and his eyes. Then when we went to see a regular vet, they said this condition would progress and get worse over time with Fozzy, and it did. Many dogs die as soon as they develop hepatic encephalitis, but we were thankful that Fozzy made it another year and a half with us. We took him on a trip with my husband and I. Fozzy even walked down the aisle at our wedding as the ring bearer in May of 2022. And we soaked in every moment with Fozzy. However, his brain damage continued to progress and his back legs got too weak. Fozzy developed nystagmus, I think that's how you say it, which is when your eyes dart back and forth constantly. Fozzy's head also darted back and forth constantly. Never wagged his tail, couldn't focus on his attention on us, didn't respond to any noises or his name being called, couldn't see, and struggled to get up. He was incredibly hyporeactive due to the brain damage. He wasn't really there anymore. He bumped into everything, didn't like playing with toys, which used to be one of his favorite things, would walk in circles and fall a lot, forgot how to drink, and looked incredibly weak. His symptoms were similar to that of canine cognitive dysfunction, but it was actually the result of brain damage. Our main floor has a lot of hardwood flooring, but we added kitchen runners and rugs to help prevent Fozzy from falling and not being able to get up. However, Fozzy would still fall and not get up on the small amount of hardwood floor, so we moved him up to our upstairs. We spent a lot of time with him up there, but his world got smaller. He didn't seem to care, though, because he was barely there cognitively. The only thing he enjoyed were his two arthritis treats, eating, when he would remember how to chew, and cuddling. Every corner of our upstairs was blocked off with towels, bags, boxes, because he would get stuck in every corner and not remember how to walk backwards to get himself unstuck. His quality of life diminished so slowly, but it sped up between September and December when he passed. He had a mini neurological crisis in October, and that's when we decided to have our first talk with the vet about his quality of life over the phone. I looked up quality of life assessments online, and the HHHHMM1 didn't fit our situation very well because Fozzy didn't appear to be in pain because he was on pain meds and he was hyperreactive. Drank well all the time. It was hygienic. So it rated his quality of life as more than it actually was. I now realize the importance of finding a quality of life scale that matches your dog's situation more specifically. The Journeys, which is online, quality life assessment was much more fitting for Fozzy's unique situation. In that October appointment, our vet recommended that we write on our calendar if it's a good day or a bad day. We did that for a while and then noticed he wasn't having any bad days anymore. Then I realized that his good days were actually not good at all, that his mind was almost completely gone and most of his body too. This was a heart-wrenching realization. In early December, my husband and I booked a quality of life assessment with our vet. Our vet confirmed our fears. Fozzy's quality of life was gone. She said she was sad to see how quickly he deteriorated from the last time she saw him in September. We asked her what she would do if this was her dog, and she confirmed that she would euthanize him. She didn't pressure us, though, but she said there was nothing left that could be done. She also told us that his degenerative valve disease had progressed a lot in the 2 months and that he was struggling. She told me what I needed to hear, that she was really impressed with how much I cared for Fozzy, that he only lived his long life because of me, and that I did absolutely everything I could as a dog mom. I was doubting if there was more I could do, and so I really, really needed to hear that. Our vet teared up and kissed Fozzy when we told her we most likely would have to go with that option. It was clear that she really loved Fozzy. My husband, being a nurse, agreed with this decision, although it broke his heart. However, I have a very different relationship with euthanasia. As someone with chronic illnesses who doesn't always have the best quality of life but doesn't want to die, I really, really struggle with the idea of euthanasia. Although I also agree that Fozzy's quality of life is very quickly deteriorating and that he probably only had a couple more months left with us where he would continue to decline. I booked an at-home euthanasia appointment for 2 weeks from then because that's when I'd have some time off of work to grieve. I quickly became anxious and tried everything I could to make Fozzy better. I prayed over him, did extensive research, and I tried looking into alternative options. I wanted to save him. I didn't want to kill my dog, and believe me, I felt like I was doing that. It still feels like I did that. Although I did extensive research, nothing could have prepared me for how traumatic the day of Fozzy's death was for my husband and I. We keep saying to each other that nothing could have fully prepared us for how traumatic it was. I thought that the anticipatory grief prepared me for the grief of losing Fozzy, but it barely touched the surface of the depth of the grief my husband and I are experiencing since losing Fozzy. I cried constantly over those 2 weeks and felt consumed with the anticipatory grief. I had anticipatory grief starting in October when we first started talking about Fozzy's quality of life, but it increased significantly once we actually had a date in mind and an appointment booked. I did everything I could to research what I could expect with the euthanasia process so I wouldn't be left with any regrets. We made a small bucket list for Fozzy of the small things he actually still enjoyed. We had an early Christmas for him and took Christmas pictures. We took him to the park twice. We cuddled him constantly. We wrote letters saying everything he meant to us so nothing would be left unsaid. And we took so many pictures and videos of every part of him. We cut a small amount of his hair off to keep. My husband and I are very grateful for the time we had to cherish Fozzy and say goodbye because it's something neither of us had with our family dogs that both died suddenly and tragically. Yet sometimes I don't know if I regret the decision. During those 2 weeks, I Googled philosophical arguments for and against euthanasia. I felt like I was alone and that no one seemed to have any ethical reservations against euthanasia besides myself. It is not that I would ever judge anyone else for doing it, but it's just that I didn't know how I could kill my own baby. I told my husband I needed permission to back out at any point, even if it was 24 hours before the appointment, and they had that as a cancellation policy. He gave me that permission that I needed. I also called and talked to our vet one more time with the additional questions I thought of since the week prior. I needed to be completely sure that nothing else could be done. I also prayed to God for wisdom to make the right decision, and that if it wasn't, his will for Fozzy, that Fozzy would pick up one of the toys at any point during his last day on Earth. He hadn't picked up a toy in probably 6 months or more without us putting it in front of his face. Another option for a sign that I gave God that it would snow a lot that day and that the vet would struggle to make it to our home. That wouldn't have been super rare either because it was supposed to snow the next day. And just a couple of weeks earlier, traffic in our city came to a halt due to snow.
We planned everything down to what the last day would look like. 8 o'clock a.m. wake up, take Fozzie to pee, and give him his meds. Cuddle him, feed him, take him out, and let him rest. Then take him to the park, etc., etc. I think all of that preparing definitely minimized the amount of guilt and regrets I'm experiencing, but it didn't eliminate them completely. One thing my husband and I are very hung up on is how our at home euthanasia appointment went. It felt too rushed. And as a registered clinical counselor, I know how important it is to not rush something so significant. How rushed the final appointment was has really bugged my husband and I to the extent that we wrote a very kindly worded email sharing our experience with the company so that they can take it into consideration in the future. The worst part of it for me, however, was seeing my baby dog dead. I cannot get the memory of that out of my head, and it's haunting me. First, though, I want to share how the appointment went so that other people can prepare. We knew that at home euthanasia appointment was going to be 1 hour long. My husband and I had letters we wanted to read over Fozzie, as well as a final treat we wanted to give him before the euthanasia happened. That morning, my husband called the company and asked if this would be okay to do during the appointment or if we should do it before. They informed us that the euthanasia process would only take 15 minutes, so we would have 45 minutes to read our letters, give him his treat, and then hold his body after. Unfortunately, when the vet got to our home, she spoke to my husband for 25 minutes, asking questions about Fozzie. I'm so grateful she did this so that she could ensure she wasn't euthanizing a healthy dog. However, this was time we weren't informed of and didn't allocate for. We wanted half an hour to read our letters and give Fozzie a final treat. My husband informed the vet at the beginning of the appointment that we would need those 30 minutes. When the vet was done talking to my husband and we realized that 25 minutes had already gone by, we felt very rushed. I hate that we felt rushed in the final moments of our baby boy's life. However, I'm thankful that I had those 25 minutes upstairs alone with my baby boy with his nose nestled into my arm. I felt so numb and anxious, but I remember praying that I would soak in every moment of that experience and never forget it. I tried to memorize how it felt. Then my husband came upstairs and we read our letters over Fozzie in private. At one point, while reading my very long letter, I turned to my husband and said that I felt rushed, but that I needed to do this slowly and intentionally, or that I would regret it for the rest of my life. After we read our letters, we planned for my husband to carry Fozzie down the stairs, and then I'd give Fozzie his final treat, which was a mix of low-fat yogurt, his favorite arthritis treats, and low-fat whipped cream. Due to his pancreatitis, we had to time this perfectly so we didn't cause him more suffering. Due to feeling rushed, my husband doesn't feel like he cherished every moment, excuse me, of carrying Fozzie down the stairs. Then probably because the vet was feeling rushed since we were already over our appointment time, she suggested that she give Fozzie the first sedative injection while he was eating his final treat. She said it would be a good distraction so that he wouldn't notice the injection as much. We agreed to it, although looking back, we didn't fully comprehend how quickly the sedative would take effect, even though she explained it to us. Logically, we understand that although she was kind and gracious enough to give us extra time, she must have felt rushed to get to her next client. But my husband and I feel so much regret over these few moments. Fozzie was extremely sleepy the day of the at-home euthanasia and took extra time to wake up and warm up to his last treat. He started to slurp it up, and that made us really happy. But just a few minutes later, the vet informed us that Fozzie was drifting off and falling into his treat. This part really irks my husband and I, that when Fozzie was having his last treat on Earth, that was supposed to be really special. He was sedated and started falling into it. We cleaned up his beard and walked toward the living room where we had a beautiful setup for Fozzie of LED candles, three of his favorite toys, and pictures throughout his life. Looking back, I don't feel like I gave Fozzie enough opportunities to pick up his plush toys that we put in the living room where we were going to do the euthanasia. Remember, I prayed that if God didn't want me to put Fozzie down, that he would show me by having Fozzie pick up one of his plush toys at any point during that day, even if it was a second before the injections. I would have canceled the euthanasia at that point and paid whatever fee I needed to. Since our main floor is mostly hardwood, we only brought Fozzie down in the room next to where his toys were twice that day, once to feed him, and we had to hold him up for most of it, and once to give him his treat during the at home euthanasia appointment. However, our kitchen is a number of steps away from the living room, and by the time we got to the living room, he was already sedated, and there was no way he would have been able to pick up his toys by himself. I have to remind myself that if God wanted me to cancel the appointment, he could have had Fozzie go get a toy when I brought him down to eat his lunch, and he wasn't sedated. Or he could have even had Fozzie snap out of the sedation and go get a toy if he really wanted to. But I regret not giving Fozzie more of an opportunity to answer the prayer I had. After we cleaned up Fozzie's beard, I carried him to the living room. We have a security camera in our home that we used to watch over Fozzie when he was well enough to be left on our main floor. This camera caught the whole experience of Fozzie's euthanasia. I haven't tortured myself by watching it, but when I was checking the camera to see if it caught this footage, I saw a snapshot of me carrying Fozzie to the living room. When I paused the video on that part, I remember feeling like I was watching a scary movie where you want to scream at the actor to run away. I wish I ran away with Fozzie, but even then, I couldn't run away from the disease that was hurting him. I hate seeing myself willingly walking toward the living room, innocent baby in arms, with him having no idea what's about to happen. It feels like a betrayal of Fozzie's trust. The next part was the scariest and most traumatic experience of my life. It felt like bringing an innocent lamb to be slaughtered, except this lamb was my best friend and my child, a child who couldn't communicate his needs. I never saw it in his eyes that he was ready to go, like a lot of people say. His eyes would dart back and forth, and he couldn't focus on me long enough to give me that look. I made the informed decision for him, but I still really struggle with it. My husband took a couple of pictures per my request of Fozzie lying on my chest for the last time, where I'm bawling but trying to hold back tears. I can't look at those pictures just yet. They're far, far too painful. Then my husband put his hands on Fozzie, with Fozzie lying on my chest, and we prayed with the song You Are My Sunshine playing on our living room speakers, because it was the song I always sang over Fozzie. The vet shared that she was about to administer the second injection, the one that would murder my baby boy. It all felt too fast. She had just done the sedation, that first injection, and we had no time to process it all. As the vet was administering the second injection, my husband and I kissed Fozzie while telling him what a perfect boy he was. I hated every second of this agony, but I wanted to be strong for Fozzie. I bawled my eyes out, but didn't want to get hysterical because I know dogs can feel their human's energy. Fozzie always had due to his a strong heartbeat due to his degenerative valve disease. I could always feel his heartbeat when I was holding him. I remember so clearly the moment his hot heart stopped and he exhaled through his nose onto me. Then I felt a liquid drip down my neck. The vet informed us that dogs with heart disease might leak fluid from their nose or mouth. When the vet checked Fozzie's heart rate and announced that he had passed, I wailed. I cried and screamed. I didn't have to be strong for Fozzie anymore. After she announced that he had died, my first thought was, what have I done? Regret, guilt, anxiety, emptiness. The vet gave us some privacy as we held Fozzie's body. I don't think I will ever forget seeing Fozzie's dead body. No one could have prepared me for that sight. I had never seen a dead body before, and although my husband has as a nurse, he agreed that it was much, much more traumatic than anything he had anticipated. I felt like a murderer who just murdered her own child. I remember reading that many people felt like they didn't have enough time to hold their baby's body, and so I wanted that time. I had no concept of how much time had gone by since the vet showed up at our house, so I didn't know that we had gone over our appointment time. When the vet came back into our room to get Fozzy's body, she said that she didn't want to rush us, but that she had another client to go to. She didn't mean to rush us, but she did. My husband and my biggest regret is that we felt so rushed during our appointment. Those final moments were our baby boy with our baby boy that we'll never get back. Knowing this, we would have read the letters before the at-home euthanasia so that we would have had enough time to be present with Fozzie, had enough time for Fozzie to enjoy his last treat, and so that we wouldn't feel rushed going from one thing to another without any time to process what was happening. At the same time, I'm so thankful that I have no regrets with how I loved Fozzie over the years and savored all of our time together. I'm so thankful that I can say that the only time I had regrets was the last hour of his life, and that although I have regrets, Fozzie was peaceful and passed in the comfort of his own home. We held onto his body for probably only 3 to 5 minutes each. I'm not sure. Long enough so that I wouldn't have had the worst regrets of my life, but definitely not long enough. My husband took pictures of me holding Fozzie, and those images haunt me. I can't look at them. When I knew it was probably time to give Fozzie's body back to the vet, in order to be respectful of her time and the next client, I told my husband, "You'll have to rip his body from my arms or I'll never give him up." He did that, and I bawled. Then the vet wrapped him up in a towel. He looked so small and fragile. His soul wasn't there anymore, and so he barely looked like himself. When the vet left, I screamed, bawled, and collapsed. I was instantly filled with so much regret. What had I done? I felt like a monster. The images of Fozzie dead haunt me to this day. Yes, I know it's only a few days later. Fozzie was such a special boy, and I killed him. I can genuinely say that although his passing was peaceful for him, I am traumatized and I don't know what to do. I used to say that I have no doubt that I'd be one of those moms who develop superhuman strength when their baby is in danger, like that mom who lifted a truck off of her child. My love for Fozzie is so intense that I have no doubt that I'd rise to the occasion and fight off any threat to his well being. I still believe that to be true, but the fact that I not only didn't prevent someone from killing my Fozzie, but paid someone to do it goes against every maternal bone in my body. I don't think it's talked about enough that no mother to human children would have to do this, but it's seen as the only ethical choice in many situations with animal children. I've been trying to take care of myself to the best of my abilities at this point. I cry on and off in waves and know it will get easier over time. I'm just haunted by the image of him dead. I don't know how to get past it. I'm able to look at funny videos of him in his younger years because he doesn't look like he did the day of his euthanasia. But any videos or pictures of him in the last few months instantly make me think of what he looked like when he was dead. I want to honor Fozzie's memory and legacy, but I can't help feeling like a monster for what I did to him. Thank you both so much for reading this super lengthy message. It was incredibly therapeutic to write out since I haven't been able to verbally talk about the events surrounding his death for longer than a few seconds without getting instantly triggered. I know it must take a lot of you guys spare time to read this, so I feel really honored that you'd read this. Thank you both from the bottom of my heart. Now, there's one she wrote us another letter, which I think is we think is useful and important for people to hear as well. So and this comes a few days later. Sorry, I forgot to add one last really important part of Fozzie's last day. As soon as he passed, I felt like I saw an image of Fozzie above me. I was lying on my back on the ground, and the image was him as a very young puppy, younger than I had ever seen him before. He was wagging his tail and said, "I'm okay, Mama," in a very happy, joyous, and carefree way. I felt like I had that visual twice in a matter of 1 minute. I'm a Christian and had a lot of troubles doubting whether animals would go to heaven or not. I even bought a book in the last 2 weeks that talks about biblical evidence that animals go to heaven. I felt like that vision of Fozzie carefree in heaven was exactly what I needed. My husband really longs for Fozzie to send him a sign that he's okay, and I hope he gets one. But we both have said that Fozzie probably gave me one because I was the one who doubted the biblical evidence more than my husband did. It was a fleeting vision that I had to hold on to and want to find someone to create art of that image for me. Anyway, sorry to add more to an already very long email. That's the last thing I'll add. Well, that was a really, I think, really helpful thing to add.
You know what? I'm glad that she had those two images
Sure.
because she was in
Yeah.
agony, such
Yeah.
agony
Yeah.
about her decision and what happened during the euthanasia that you don't really have, I mean, a lot of control over, right? Somebody comes to your house and you only have so much time, and of course you want more time.
Yep.
And I think that's partly something with at home. I know, and in the veterinarian practices in the ERs, they would give someone as much time as they needed, which could be hours and
Can
hours.
can be to sit there with the
Yeah,
body.
right,
Yes, indeed. Well, the thing that one of the things I think that's so helpful about her note is how fearlessly she articulates those feelings
yeah,
about having murdered her child.
right.
I think that's probably very cathartic for many people to hear as well, that
Mhm.
Sarah has the fortitude to just put it out there and say, "This is the way I felt."
Oh,
And of course, she wasn't murdering her child. She was
no,
ending Fozzie's suffering.
right.
But that's a part of us that tends to get really revved up when it's actually happening because it just feels
It feels
so
like
conflictual, so
right,
conflictual. There's so much conflict involved in that because, as she said, we would do anything
right.
to
To save
protect
him.
and keep safe
Yeah,
our much loved animal companion. And yet here we are planning and executing the
his
ending
life.
of their lives. And so it's very complicated emotionally.
Of
And
course it
she
is.
lays that right out there. And so it's very, I'm very grateful for her doing that because it's so powerful and it's so raw. I mean, the way she
It's
says it, it's
raw,
so
it's
raw.
conflictual, it's emotional, and as you just said, and we know, it's the diseases were
Many diseases. And
killing this little boy. I mean,
and
there were so many of them.
and when you reflect on the extent of concern and love and care that
Yeah.
both Sarah and her husband gave to caring for this very, very debilitated
Yes.
dog. I mean, who could possibly give more? It
Y
just there's nothing more
Nothing
that
more. I mean,
anybody could have done.
she and her
I mean,
husband, and she before she got married, and
yeah,
that was her fear, right? If she got married, the Fozzie would leave, right?
yeah,
But I mean, they everything that possibly that anybody could think of, and
yeah.
help that little
And
boy.
then the image is so wonderful that she had. I mean, she sees
Yeah.
the image of her dog as a puppy,
Oh,
which she actually never got to see in life.
in
She
life,
never got to see Fozzie as a puppy playing and wagging his tail. And so, what an amazing gift
and also
that
healthy,
is.
right? I
Yeah,
mean, it's
yeah,
really
healthy and
sweet,
playing and wagging his
energetic
tail.
little
And he was,
healthy boy.
must have been a tiny puppy because he was a very
Yeah,
little dog.
right.
and and to be able to carry that. And so what I keep hoping is that she can juxtapose
Yeah,
that image
that image,
when she sees when she sees that flash of
right.
her di- of
The lifeless body.
lifeless
Yeah.
Fozzie, because I mean, how many of us have had that lifeless image seared
Oh,
into
into your
our
head.
thinking? It just keeps coming,
Y
it keeps coming back.
Yeah,
I mean, eventually, I mean, I can conjure so many of them right now.
Yeah.
They're readily available. But so when I say that, I mean Jack, I mean Lily, I mean Abigail and Isabel
Yeah.
and Phoebe and Reginald, and all of them. I can
You come,
access
yes,
those
they come
images.
back.
They don't
They don't go
carry
away.
with them the same charge, but
Mhm.
they're not without a pang
Of
of grief.
course. Pain.
But in the beginning, oh my
Oh,
God.
it's horrific.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it is horrific. But we really want to thank Sarah
Yes.
for
Yes.
her story.
Yep.
Yeah, it was, I think it was such an important thing for her to do. And really, like, Sarah, if you're listening, we'd like to know how you're doing because
Yep.
it's been about a month, I guess,
Mhm.
right? It was around the 16th, I believe, of December, somewhere around there. So
Yep.
I'd like
Yep.
to know if you've also had some other visions,
Yeah. Yep.
he's come back to see you.
Or
So
her husband. What a gift that
yes,
is.
and her husband, he needs to see him too.
Yep. So thank you again, Sarah. Nancy, as always, it's
Mhm.
great talking with you, and we'll look forward to
Next
another
week.
conversation next week.
Take care, everyone.